On Network Africa today, anti-government protests are held in Zimbabwe on Saturday to press for free elections in 2018. Inauguration Day it is in Zambia as President Edgar Lungu is sworn in, having won the August 11th presidential election. Plus, the UK Nursing and Midwifery Council says nurse Pauline Kafeke was not dishonest in dealing with the Ebola virus. Let's begin Network Africa. Hello everyone, I am Amarachi Ubani. Welcome to the program. We begin in Zimbabwe where anti-government protests are set to begin throughout the country. They're scheduled for Saturday and come weeks after they were banned by the police following a directive from the president. The protests are being organized by opposition political parties who want elections set for 2018 to be supervised by international observers, including the United Nations. They also want election laws to be changed so there will be no hindrance to free and fair elections. Zimbabwe's security laws state that protest organizers need to notify the police of their plans, though law enforcement agents routinely refuse to sanction opposition demonstrations. Eric Gavala, a journalist in Kenya, joins me now for more on this. Eric, thank you for joining us on Network Africa. Eric, if I'm hoping that you can hear me, though I do think there is some disconnect somewhere. But oh, great. Eric, will there be a series of protests organized by the opposition parties, or will it just be a one-off protest on Saturday?
Thank you so much. Well, at this time, we do not have specific information on the number or the frequency of the protest. But the timing of the ban of the planned protests across the country is very suspicious because, you see, the opposition has been stopping at nothing to push forward their demands, which include reform on the elections. So they have been growing increasingly impatient with them. So I believe the opposition might proceed with the nationwide protest even after this Saturday.
So President Robert Mugabe is determined to clamp down on the protests, having promised to remain in office for life. What are his fears concerning these protests?
Thank you so much. Well, Zimbabwe has been rocked by protests for months now, and President Mugabe has been described by many as a ruthless dictator. And like any other dictator, the president has little patience for dissent or being challenged for that matter. And that is what he's exactly doing. And these protests embody a challenge over his authority in the nation. So we know that the 92-year-old has often used brutal force to silence his opponents. And we expect him to be all the more ruthless even these protests, because he wants to extend his 36-year-old brief of power. So that might be a reason why he's clamping down, just tracking the whip on these protests.
Are there any strong candidates stepping up to run against him?
Well, despite President Mugabe's wife, Grace Mugabe's aggressive political stance, Mugabe is still expected to be endorsed by the ruling party. But a strong opposition is coming from his former vice president called Joyce Mujuru, and the latest information we've gotten is that Ms. Mujuru is in talks with MDC's leader, Morgan Tsvangirai. So this might be the only way that they may be able to unseat the President Mugabe, who will be 94 years at the time, because if these opposition leaders go at it, as individuals, it might prove difficult. But the coalescing of powers and the opposition coming together might present a challenge for President Mugabe.
Eric, there is always a limitation to international observers during elections in Zimbabwe. So has the government changed its position? as the Electoral Commission prepares for the polls?
Well, Mugabe's ZANU-PF won the last elections in 2013, but the elections were marred by allegations of electoral fraud. And given that election reforms is one of the key things the opposition is demanding, the very reason these protests are there, besides the economic challenges Zimbabwe is facing, is that the people are seeking electoral reforms. So given the government's hard stance on these demonstrations, it is very unlikely that the government is going to soften, its position on allowing more international observers or even having a free and fair election for that matter.
Eric Avala, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. The 3 suspects arrested in connection with the attack on the police station in Mombasa, Kenya, have appeared in court, though briefly. The suspects, all women, were charged with harboring terror suspects. They did not take any pleas since they had difficulties communicating. The 3 were arrested shortly after 3 women, covered from head to toe, stabbed a police officer and set the police station on fire before being shot dead by the police. They later found a suicide vest on one of the attackers. A court adjourned as the magistrate granted the prosecutor 24 hours to provide a Somali interpreter and a sign language for one of the suspects who is deaf. Meanwhile, the United States and 5 European countries want all external military forces out of Libya immediately. That's after a military general who does not recognize the UN-backed unity government seized some key oil ports from a militia loyal to the government. Forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar took control of the ports of Lanuf, Es Sida, Zwetina and Brega, warding off a force allied to the UN-backed government in Tripoli. The seizure threatened to reignite conflict over Libya's oil resources and disrupt efforts by the government to revive oil production and exports. Western powers have condemned the attacks and affirmed their intent to enforce a Security Council resolution designed to prevent what they called illicit oil exports. Eastern Libya factions, allied to General Haftar, had previously tried to export oil independently from the government and the National Oil Corporation in Tripoli. Now, thousands of migrants are still making that dangerous trip across the Mediterranean. They're putting their lives at risk, though it appears to live in it's up to fate to decide whether they make the trip safely or not.
The International Organization for Migration expects migrations through the Agadez region this year to reach 300,000. That's more than double the 120,000 it estimates went through in 2015. Michelle Bambasey is a migrant assistance specialist at IOM.
When you leave Agadez and you enter into Libya, the journey changes a lot. Not just because you have to cross the Sahara Desert, which is just the first step, but also because your kind of vulnerability increase. And what was before mainly a smuggling network progressively shifting to a trafficking network. So the exploitative, the abuse part increases. And after Libya, you have to survive in Libya, which is not a given. You have to survive the detention center in Libya, the security situation in Libya, which is not clearly easy, not even for the Libyans themselves. And then you have to cross the Mediterranean. So it's a very dangerous one.
Those who embark on the treacherous journey are constantly at risk of being hijacked by bandits in the desert or being abandoned by smugglers near the Niger-Algeria border. In spite of the obvious dangers, migrants are still leaving the ancient trading town, often in small groups at night, to meet up with 4x4s waiting in the desert. There is an established path by bus through countries like Mali and Burkina Faso to Agadez, where migrants buy passage from people smugglers towards Algeria and across the Sahara to Libya. From there, they take their chances with smugglers across the Mediterranean. Smugglers who ferry migrants across the Sahara take up to $500 a time. Although home to some of the continent's fastest growing economies, with the collapse of foreign tourism due to the rise of armed Islamist groups in the Sahara, West Africa is struggling to generate enough jobs for its mushrooming young population.
We are going in peace, no anything, we don't have anything bad. We are just going to find something to do as a as a young man.
More on that story about the migrants making their way to Europe via Niger Republic. When Network Africa returns, police in Uganda attempt to break up a women in white protest. Please join us again.